Welcome to Stats Daily Podcast. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And thank you guys for subscribing. We're blessed enough to have a guy with his own podcast. He's a Bigfoot researcher. You do all cryptids though, don't you, man?
Yeah. I started doing the Bigfoot thing in 2012, and just from there it's kind of taken off, man. And I just really been fortunate to be able to follow the different avenues, not just in the cryptid world, but also in the paranormal and the UFO world, really, man.
Heck yeah. Joe De Hoyos, I appreciate you, man, being on, taking the time out of your night and being on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate you inviting me on the show, man. Like I said, we were talking about earlier. I was on before, so it was really cool to be able to come back and have a little one-on-one session, I guess you could say.
Heck yeah, man. So, since then, have you had any new evidence of UFOs or Bigfoot encounters or something?
Yeah, being here in Texas, man, we're a really a hot spot for it seems for everything. There's some areas in Texas where it seems like for whatever reason it attracts everything, whether everything from the cryptids to paranormal to the UFOs. But yeah, I've had some pretty interesting, I guess, investigations, and researching. Um, I don't know what we talked about the last time we were on your show, but yeah, I got a really good friend of mine now who had an encounter, a Bigfoot encounter, a couple years ago now, and it really affected him, you know. And just like a typical person, man, you either jump all in or you don't want nothing to do with it. He jumped in with both feet, man, and he's doing really good in the field, and I'm really proud of him. So his area keeps us pretty busy. We find footprints out there, snap trees, twisted branches. We get some pretty good vocals out there too. So yeah, so we've been pretty busy with that area. But also here, there's been quite a bit of activity, regarding UFOs here in and around Houston. So you know, um, it's a Texas is a good place to be, man. Good place to be, and paranormal wise, there's always stuff going on, man. There's a place in Galveston that it's an old hotel. It's called the Galvez, and one of my coworkers actually knows the new owners, and I've been trying to get uh, him to get me that the most haunted room, which is I believe 501. So I really want to get into that room and get set up and do an investigation there.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And you have your own podcast as well.
Yeah, it's called Beyond the Woodline, um, and we cover everything. I mean, from UFOs, aliens, cryptids, remote viewing, psychic mediums. I mean, you name it. If it's strange and unknown or mystery, we like to have it on the show. And I've been lucky to have some pretty good guests, man. Some really cool people on there, and some of these people I made friends with, and we still keep in touch to this day. So I've been lucky in that regard too.
Heck yeah, man. There is some good people in the crypto world.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, man, you kind of run into some people that you know, you got to keep your distance. You got to keep a guard up around them. But I mean, that's an airy genre. I think. I think there's a lot of people out there want to wear the tiara. And for me personally, man, I like to share information and uh, lift other people up, man. I like to see other people do good, man. People like yourself, I know we're not super close, but dude, I'll share anything you've got. I'll try to promote you as best I can. I wouldn't like shut you down. And I think that's what we need to do more of. Just try to lift each other up.
Absolutely appreciate that, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what has been you like the newest like UFO sighting there and stuff? Like what are they described as? They described it as like a classic type of
Um,
UFO or like these
y-
cigars types.
yeah, there's a lot of I guess you call it like the trapezoid, not necessarily the pyramid shape, but more the trapezoid shape that one, the classic saucer is always reported. Um, and then there's even like the best way I can describe it is a pyramid. I've heard of pyramids. Um, but yeah, that seems to be the new thing now. At least people that I've talked to, that seems to be the new thing, the pyramid shaped one. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm not sure what's going on with that, and but my own experience, and it was about had to be 20 years ago, easy. I was out fishing in Galveston, and the gentleman I was with, he was maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 feet to my right, somewhere in that ballpark. And he goes, "Hey, Joe, look." And he points up to the left. And so, I look up and, dude, there's this freaking round disc just hovering right above us. And it was going so slow and so smooth. I mean, there was no wobble to it. It didn't have any lights here. There was maybe, I don't know, I get the times mixed up, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. The moon was still high in the sky at that point. It was a full moon that night. And I mean, we saw this thing clear. It was a clear sky, and it was maybe like 300 feet above us. Like I tell everybody all the time, I think a professional baseball player could have hit it with a baseball. And it took like 5 minutes for it to get out of sight, and it made no noise. A couple miles down the road, there's a small airport for like smaller airplanes, the single engine airplanes, and we could hear them things coming in all night long. There's just the buzzing of their engines, of the motor. And this thing was, like I said, right above us, made no noise, no sound, nothing. You know. But that was one of the craziest nights that I had as far as actually visually seeing a craft. There was no doubt it was a craft. It wasn't just a light in the sky. It was a craft. You know, it was definitely something uh, that someone or something intelligent was flying it. You know. Um, then last year, I don't remember what it may have been. I don't know, maybe this time of year. Um, but I was out there with my friend Walter. We were doing our Bigfoot stuff, and we went back to his house. And as we're saying our goodbyes and stuff. Where I'm on his front porch, and okay, I gotta go take off. I had like another hour drive to get home. We seen these two lights coming at each other like that, and when they got like that, they just started circling each other. You know, they were just made a circle, and then they just separated and went their own ways. That was definitely strange. Um, so that was the latest thing that I've seen. Um, but what's funny is that trapezoid one. It's almost like I guess it's almost like a triangle shape. But my daughter saw that. Um, and how old is she? She's 26 now. She may have been 15 or 16. She was going in South Texas by Raymondville, which is kind of near the border. Uh, she called me up. Was like, "Dad, I just saw this object." She said she was sitting down in the back seat, of course. And she looked out the window. It was dark, and she thought that her phone was on. She thought she was looking at the reflection of her phone because it was on her lap. So she looked down and she saw that number one, her phone was off, and number two, it was face down. The screen was face down. And when she looked at it up again, that it shot backwards. It was almost keeping pace with the car, and then it shot backward. And she said that the way it shot backwards is that it looked like it was skipping, and it reminded her of that movie Jumper. You know how I don't know if you saw that movie Jumper. That kid, he can like teleport and stuff. She said that's what it reminded her of, the way it moved. That was pretty strange. And maybe 3 or 4 years after that, when she started driving, she went. Her and my other daughter were driving in Houston, and they saw the same craft. This time it was in the daytime when they saw that, the same exact thing. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. My son even saw. He was out with the Boy Scouts, and he snuck out of his tent, in the middle of the night. Boys gonna be boys, right? And he saw this light in the sky, and he said it was just a big bright ball, and that he said the way it shot off reminded him like the way like on Star Trek when they shoot off like at warp speed. Yeah, he said that's what he reminded him of. He said it was just a ball of light and it just kind of shot off. So yeah, I guess my family has had some pretty good encounters with UFOs or whatever you want to call them at this point. UAPs. But you know, I think the government knows a lot about these things, and that's part of the reason why they're coming out. Uh, giving us a little bit of information. But I think they know a lot more than what they're going to tell us. But I used to always wonder why they wouldn't tell us. But I mean, you saw how we acted there with COVID. We ran to the store and bought all the damn toilet paper, right? Yeah, now you're going to tell us that aliens exist? Yeah, I don't think so. You know, so
Yeah, yeah, man. My buddy Russ Kellett has been abducted by aliens for
yeah.
a bunch and everything. He has books about it and stuff. He has his own show and stuff. He's a good dude. He's actually gonna have his he's gonna be part of like some show on Discovery Plus. But
Okay.
yeah, he said like uh the government knows about aliens big time and that there's aliens that are like super soldiers for these countries that are fighting each other and stuff.
Hmm.
He's actually fought in these wars himself with the aliens and stuff.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've seen people talk about that stuff that they fought, against other aliens and with other aliens, and um, yeah, so and it seems like a lot of these people, their stories kind of correlate with each other. Uh, I think not everyone can be exaggerating, not everybody can be. I hate to use the word lying, uh, but unfortunately, there are people that lie, and it's the same thing that goes on with the Bigfoot world. Not everyone can be lying about seeing a Bigfoot. You know, not all the footprints are fake, right? Um, so if even one footprint is real, then these creatures are real, and that's the way I see it with the aliens and UFOs. And if even one report is real, then hell, they're real. That's all that really matters. But yeah, I think there's a lot that actually goes on. I've talked to abductees myself, and you know, I made some really, really good friends in that field, and uh, I got really, really close with one person in particular, and because they were right on the money with a lot of what they said. So I don't want it's her story to tell. I don't want to tell her story, but it was typical abduction kind of stuff. And like I said, she has no reason to lie. She doesn't put herself out there. She doesn't promote herself or anything. Something she keeps to herself. She keeps notes and journals, and uh, it's just like ramblings. Her notes are just like ramblings of a mad person. It's pretty crazy.
What's really creepy is, man, that he was like in the hospital and stuff like after one of his abductions, and one of the doctors wrote on a paper that he was a UFO researcher for some reason. That's really weird, and the document's actually in his book, so it's legit.
Oh damn. Hmm. That's pretty cool, dude.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The doctor he didn't even know wrote down UFO research.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Pretty cool. Yeah. I think the government. Um, I think they're involved with a lot of stuff, and like I said, man, I used to bash on them. I used to bash the shit out of the government, but I can't anymore now, knowing a lot more of what I know and knowing how people act. You know, uh, I just won't do it. I don't blame them for keeping shit quiet now. Um, I'm sure they keep a lot of it quiet just for the national security or whatever, But I think they also keep shit quiet because people are stupid, man. They don't know how to act.
Definitely. I think that wasn't there a president that actually had a UFO sighting in a minute? I think there
I I
was.
I think Carter did. I can't remember if it was Nixon that did. But there's been quite a well, at least two or three.
It was at the
President
White
that.
House too.
Yeah, yeah. That may have been Nixon. I think Jimmy Carter, when he saw his UFO, I think he was still governor of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. I think Nixon's the one that saw it at the White House. And then who's the one that went missing for 3 days? Was that Eisenhower who went missing for like 3 days?
Oh, I have no
And
idea.
yeah, and the press didn't know where he was at, and supposedly, allegedly, he had went to the secret location and met with UFOs or aliens, and that's what he was doing for like these 3 days that he was gone. Yeah, I think it was Eisenhower. I mean, I could be wrong. I probably am wrong, but I think that's who it was. Yeah,
Yeah, man, there's some cool stuff out there like Area 51. There's some like documentary on Peacock actually of like a former Area 51 worker talking about it and how he's seen aliens and everything there.
yeah, yeah. I I watched a lot of those documentaries too, and I think that it's just some really interesting stuff to say the least. I think there are, yeah, yeah. I'm actually googling it right now. Yeah, it was President Eisenhower allegedly met with the aliens. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool too, man. You know, I just think that we'll find out for sure one day, one way or the other. You know, I don't think they can hide this from us for too much longer. Same thing goes with the Bigfoot and the cryptids. There's too many people have experiences and encounters, and are credible people. I think a lot of times people think of anyone that has any kind of encounter, strange encounter, that there's something wrong with them. They're drug addicts or whatever the hell. That's not the case, man. I talk to people who know judges, surgeons, good people, law enforcement, firefighters. Uh, I think when you talk to those people, and all those people, man, they're trained to pick up on stuff, and um, I just don't see them as lying, or at least being a lot more credible. And I'm not saying that the average person isn't credible, uh, especially when it comes to hunters and experienced hikers and campers. They're just as credible too. When they come back and tell you, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, then you gotta you gotta really really listen to them, I think. And
For
then on
sure.
the other hand, people who don't have any of that experience, and the one time they go out to the woods or the one time they wander out nowhere in the middle of nowhere and they see something, you got to take that into account too. That this person, has nothing to fucking gain by this, you know, other than ridicule.
Yeah, it actually affects them negatively.
And that's one of the things that, doing this and doing my podcast. I mean, I've met with people who are like, I haven't told this to anyone. My wife doesn't know this. My family doesn't know this. I haven't talked about this in years. I've talked to a guy who's had a Bigfoot experience, and he told me, because I'm gonna tell you the story, and I'm only gonna tell you one time, and I'll be damned. He only told me one time, and I never heard from him again. And then, doing this, doing the research, you run into people, and I got stickers on my truck, and people come, hey man, what's going on with these stickers? And I'll tell them, I research, I investigate, Bigfoot and other cryptids, and they'll be like, let me tell you about this story, and they'll tell me a story. I think that's great. I mean, why would a stranger come up and just make up a story on the spot just to do it? Waste 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Um, One of the more interesting um, I don't want to say stories, but definitely what led after her story. She had a really crazy story, but her initial story was that she was in the Big Bear in California, up in the mountains. She was hiking, and she said that she happened to look down the side of the mountain that she was on, and she said that she saw this guy, and she's like, he was like in this big ghillie suit, and she goes, the guy was he was a big guy. She goes, he was so big, and I was just like, man, that's a big guy. I said, well, how far away from you was he? And she goes, he was about 200 feet away. And I said, if a guy's standing 200 feet away and you're saying he's a big guy, he's got to be a big freaking guy, you know? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, why is he out here, you know, in the middle of summertime with a ghillie suit, you know? And she said, for whatever reason, she goes, I thought about the show Finding Bigfoot. And she said, I picked up a stick and I slapped it against a tree, banged it on the tree. She goes, and it just instantly just spun around and looked up the hill at me. She goes, and it crouched like a linebacker crouches. And she goes, and as soon as it crouched and it saw me, she goes, it just took off and ran through the woods. Because that was the last I seen of it. She goes, but it took off so fast. She goes, I had never seen anybody move that fast in my life. And she goes, and then afterwards, I started thinking about it. She goes, I bet that was a damn Bigfoot. She goes, because he was just so big, you know. So we were talking about that, and you know, you hear those stories, you know, all the time, you know. It was the second story that really kind of threw me for a loop. She's like, I have something else I want to tell you, and I said, go ahead, you know. She said that she used to go to her grandpa's house, and I can't remember if it was there in California or somewhere else. Um, but she said they had a pier on the property. You know, there's a body of water there, lake, ocean, whatever. Um, but she said that she would always, you know, jump off that pier and go swimming, and she would like go down, and there was like this big crevice at the bottom, right? And she said she was always too little to swim that far down. But you know, years go by, and she's getting older and stronger swimmer. She said that one day she decided, you know what, I'm gonna go take a swim, and I'm gonna get to that crevice, right? So she starts swimming down there. She says she almost gets to the bottom, and she realizes that she's running out of air and that she's not gonna have enough air to go up to the top. So she says she stops swimming. She starts going back up to the top, and she's kicking and you know flailing her arms, and she's like, I know I'm not gonna make it, you know, like she's like, I'm about to run out of air. And she says that right as she um, uh, was almost out of air, these two hands come in front of her face, and it opens up. And when the hands open up, the big air bubble comes and like it engulfs her head, and she breathes in that air bubble, and that gives her enough oxygen to make it back up to the top. So you know, she's like, she goes, I don't know, what do you think? Was that a mermaid? I don't know. I've never seen a mermaid, never had an encounter with a mermaid, but it was definitely something to help you out that was underwater, you know.
Yeah,
But you know,
that's been
yeah,
something I've been interested in though, man, is mermaids and stuff.
right, yeah. And mermaid sightings are like all over the world, and when you look online, there are a lot of people that have seen these things and absolutely believe that they're there. You know, um, I can't remember what actor or entertainer that was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he talked about that when he was a kid, he saw a mermaid. Yeah, I know. Yeah, he was with somebody else, another kid, and they had told him not to go down to this river, you know, that stay away. But you know, being kids, they went down there. He said, yeah. He goes, it looked like a torpedo was coming under the water, and I don't remember if it jumped up or if it just came out of the water real fast. But he said, yeah, it was a person that looked like it was part fish, you know. And then come to find out, that area was a very active area for mermaid sightings too. So that was an interesting story. Like I said, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. And he talked about that.
Yeah. You don't usually hear too many mermaid researchers or anything.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of hard to, I guess, research those kind of creatures. You know, I mean, hell, Loch Ness is in a big lake, and is, you know, it's the researchers are few and far between. You know, and there's not a lot of information you can get out of that. You know, which I don't know now in 2022 if they're having sightings still or not. You know, I'd be interested to see when the last sighting of that creature was.
Yeah. Definitely some creepy stuff, man. I don't know. I think I would be creeped out if I seen a mermaid, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty, yeah. It would depend on I think on the what kind of encounter it was, if it was a peaceful one or an aggressive one, you know. But yeah, I think either way it'd be freaking you out, you know, because I think even people who see, you know, Bigfoot and it's not an aggressive encounter, you know, it changes them forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just like humans, there's good Bigfoots and there's good bad. I mean, there's bad Bigfoots as well.
Yeah. Well, I go even further than that. I think they're like any other animal on the planet. There's good ones and there's bad ones. Uh, People think that dolphins are friendly animals, and which they are overall, but they'll still bite your ass. If you get too close, you do the wrong thing. Um, and you've seen bears, YouTube videos of bears where they walk through a campsite, walk through guys fishing. Don't give them a care in the world. That doesn't mean, hey, we're your forest friend either.
Especially if you get around their cubs.
Right? Yeah, yeah. There was one I remember. There was like two, three guys sitting on the edge of the river there fishing, and a bear with her, with her babies came along, and the guys were like, "Hey, don't move, just sit in your chair." That wasn't an invitation to come join us.
Yeah, I'm sure Bigfoot's the same way as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of creatures are, including us. You don't know somebody, you don't want them near your kids. Especially in this day and age.
No. Yeah, you hear a lot about Bigfoot like carrying their baby on their back and
Right,
everything. I've heard a lot of sightings of that actually.
right. Yeah. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who personally had a sighting, but the as far as having babies go. But yeah, the other stories that you hear, they're on their back, which is interesting because I had so family near uh, Austin, Texas, and it's out in the hill countries. It's what it's called, and they had uh, people tell them that they've seen like people come out of the woods, and they said they saw somebody come out of the woods and he had a backpack on his back, you know. And I was like, first of all, you're out in the fucking middle of nowhere, which they are. Who's gonna be walking in the woods at nighttime? Um, and this particular property, um, they've had now, I know over 30 years, but they contacted me like 3 or 4 years ago, and they were like, "Hey, Joe, you're into the Bigfoot stuff, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Yeah, I think we got it on our property." And they told me they had been hearing wood knocks out there for years. They have a big, mobile home out there now. But before that, they would just go out there and just camp, and just, pitch their tents and have a campfire and just, go out there. They had deer feeders out there and they would hunt and shit. Um, but yeah, he said that they would hear wood knocks. If they went out to the woods, they would hear something walking with them in the woods, pacing them. They would have rocks thrown at them. Um, and then years later, they would get the mobile home put out there. And, the mobile homes, they would set it up on bricks, because it's really unlevel out there. That's why they call it the hill country. It's really rocky. And but by this time they were grown ups, they were adults, and they had kids. Well, one of my cousins, she had twin girls, and when you go out there, the kids still want to go out there and camp and have fun and outside. Um, but they found about 3 o'clock in the morning, the girls came running inside because they said they had heard a monster walking around their tent, and then it pushed the tent down from the top, on top of them. So they took off and they ran inside the mobile home, and their dad ran out there to go see what was going on, but he didn't find anything. And my aunt, her and my uncle, they were the ones who actually bought the land. Um, she said that one day she heard this heavy breathing getting closer and closer to the home, to the mobile home. She had the door open, had a screen door. It was a nice night, and that she heard this breathing. And it was getting closer and closer. And she called my uncle and said, "Hey, I think there's a bear outside." You know, he had a friend that came up there with him. Um, so they grabbed their rifles and they ran outside. And he said they chased him back to the woods. He told my aunt, he goes, "I don't think that was a bear." And that's all he told my aunt. You know, I don't think that was a bear. And so there was a girl that lived up the road, maybe a mile or so up the road. Um, my cousin made friends with her, and she would go spend the night. And she said one night she told my cousin, "Hey, come out here, look, I want to show you about a chicken coop." And they go out there to the chicken coop, and there's this big footprint. And she tells my cousin, "Bigfoot made that." And my cousin's like, I never heard of a Bigfoot. I don't know what the hell a Bigfoot was, you know. And she's like, no, that's your dad's, your dad, the footprint. She says, but I put my foot inside it. She goes, man, it was so big. She said, it was like way too big to be a man's footprint. She goes, but I just didn't know what I was looking at. And then, uh, she grew up, had a family and would still go out there to the land. And she said one day she was laying in bed and um, she heard like a grunt and she looked up at the window and she saw two eyes. She called it a shimmer, but it's eye shine. But she goes, I saw the shimmer of its eyes, and she goes, I woke up my husband. I was like, hey, there's somebody outside, and he grabbed the rifle and ran outside. There was nobody out there. So she's telling me this. I'm like, well, how tall is that window? She goes, it's pretty tall. She's short. She's like 5 foot, maybe 5'1". She goes, I couldn't see inside because my head might just barely come to the window ledge. I said, well, how tall was this thing? And she goes, Joe, it had to be at least 7 feet. She goes, I never thought about it. She goes, but this thing had to be at least 7 feet tall. And I said, well, how wide? And she goes, Joe, it took up that whole window. That's how wide it was. That window was easy at 4 feet across. Easy. Yeah. That was it's pretty cool doing this. People come up and talk to you about this stuff, and you get to hear stories and encounters, and stuff you would probably never ordinarily hear. You know,
Heck yeah, man. Have you had any like interesting dogman stories?
not me personally. I've talked to people who have ran into them, or you know, maybe not really seen it face on, and they're not sure what they saw, but for whatever reason, they think that it was a dogman and not a Bigfoot. Some strange tracks. Found out in the Sam Houston and of course the hill country. The hill country is an area where there's a lot more dogman sightings out there. Um, I don't particularly know why. It's really rocky, really hilly terrain, but maybe that's why. Maybe this is easy for these creatures to uh, move around, and um, they can certainly traverse uh, a lot of land that's like that than we can. I don't know if you've ever been in rocky hill country land, but man, it's hard to move around. And I mean, you can fuck up your ankle or whatever, use gravel. Um, but livestock can certainly move around in that kind of stuff. I think that's one reason why they're out there. They can just move around, and it's easy to hide. There's a lot of ravines and gullies, and you get down on all fours, you'll never see them. You know, even some of them are deep enough to where uh, standing up, you won't be able to see them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always been interesting hearing stories about them and stuff. They said sometimes they see like a man's head on a dog's body or something.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's different species, I guess you could say, of dog man. Yeah, because some have the dog head with the the Bigfoot body, and then some have the ones with the dog legs, with that bent knee, that reverse knee looking leg, with the hawks. Some have tails, some don't have tails. Some have a more pronounced snout, some don't. Even the ears, some have a more uh, pointy ears than others, and some are set back further, some are set closer together. So you hear a lot of maybe it's just a different, like with people, we all look different. So maybe it could be just that, but maybe what I think is there's just different species out there.
Definitely, brother. Now, what day does your podcast come out, and what time?
I do my podcast whenever the hell I get a chance. It can be any day of the week. It can be at any time. I try to give a couple of days notice. Most of my guests I usually book 2 weeks out in advance, and a couple of days before the show, I'll start promoting it. So that people can have a chance to look at it. But yeah, it's pretty much just whenever I get ready, and it's always live. But of course, you can get to Spotify and Anchor and YouTube and check out the shows like that.
Absolutely, bro. I'll put that in the description for sure.
Cool, man. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. It was a lot of fun. We need to do it again, and maybe I'll have you on my show.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. Appreciate Joe the Hoyos taking the time out of his night to be on. I want to thank you guys for subscribing. Y'all have a good night and God bless.